I am Sam Mader, and today we're going to take a look at getting Proxmox set up. And essentially what I'm doing is I am working on rebuilding my entire 7 days dedicated environment. So we're going to take a look at some of the things I'm going to do to get that set up, talk about some of the security practices I'm going to try to put in place, as well as automations around that, dealing with N8N, including some Claude code. I also have my own AI server, Archimedes, spelled with AI, just for those wondering. We're also going to look at getting the web services set back up, the mail server set back up, and some of the key infrastructure pieces. Some of the tools I use in my environment are Wazoo to help with managing potential vulnerabilities on the systems, as well as to have a on-premise SIEM. And then I also use Security Onion as a network monitoring tool. And some of the goals that I'm going to try to do is set up some automations around that kind of security, orchestration and automation and response, or SOAR as some people know it. Sorry about that click. And just kind of learn some of the setups. I am definitely more of a leadership role when it comes to cybersecurity. I know the technical side, but I definitely know the logistics side better. So I like to try to increase my knowledge in the technical side and try to stay up on new trends and new systems. And things like N8N and Security Onion are new to me. I do have some experience with using Wazoo. I've used that for a while now, but I'm still learning that. There's a lot that you could do with it, and I am by no means an expert. But they're good tools to have in your back pocket when it comes to security. Yeah, I think that covers kind of the gist of what we're going to go over. So the first thing that we'll take a look at here is we're going to look at a little bit of what I'm trying to accomplish. So this is my run book for rebuilding my 7 days dedicated infrastructure. The idea behind it is we're going to reset up the domain 7daysdedicated.com. I do use Cloudflare as my DNS provider. I am going to be building a cluster called 7DD-cluster, which is just short for 7 days dedicated. And then we're going to reattach the nodes in my cluster to the cluster. So I currently have 3 Dell R710 servers that I have in the cluster environment, as well as 3 HP ProLiant DL360Ps Gen 8 that are in the environment. I had them set up as 2 separate clusters previously, but after doing some digging and some research, it does appear that trying to combine them into a single cluster helps with just the overall management. I'm not having to bounce between 2 different cluster environments to manage the systems and virtual devices, whether that's the LXC containers, LCX containers. I always forget which way the acronym goes, or if it's working on the game servers. I currently have a setup where I use AMP by Cube Coders. It is, I want to say, well, I actually don't remember what AMP stands for. I will try to figure that out and get back. In fact, why don't we just take a look right now? It is provided by a group called Cube Coders, though. So if you want to look it up, that is the that is the group that provides amp. And what my goal is to rebuild my amp into more of a master slave setup where I have one master controller that controls all the targets in the cluster. So I'm working on trying to cluster that as well. And I want to essentially rebuild it and make it fresh and new. So taking a look here, I apologize. I'm just trying to find the details and I cannot find what AMP stands for. Let me do a quick Google search here. All right. Here we go. Application Management Panel. I knew it was going to be something easy. Anyways, it's a great tool if you manage game servers. They support several different games, like server-based games. Arma is one that I tend to run from it. Minecraft, 7 Days to Die. Arc, I do both Arc Survival Evolved and Ascended servers. I also run a Scum server through it. I run Conan Exiles, or at least I had been. I do need to rebuild that, but they have all sorts of different ones you can run. Terraria, Space Engineers, even Euro Truck Simulator. Just anything you can think of. Oh, Valheim is another one that I run through it. So it's very robust in the games that it supports for running as a management panel for. So we're going to work on getting those reinstalled. You'll see some notes to that in the notes here. And essentially what we have here is just a run book of the things that I need to go through. So I do have my network cards laid out correctly. I have my IP scheme configured in here on how I want to do that. I also have my VM and LXC layout set up. Setting up Pi-hole to run my internal DNS as well as ad blocker. I've heard that it does that. Again, something new to me. I haven't played with it before. Traefik or Traefik. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I've heard it referred to as Traefik, but that's a new one to me. I'm more familiar with Nginx, but I thought I would try to get that set up as my reverse proxy as well as SSL manager for my servers. We're going to get an authentic server set up for identity access management as well as SSO. I do have an email server that I run, running iRedmail on it. Again, N8N, I have a web app that I'm going to be running. I was running a WordPress style website for the 7 days dedicated website, but I'm going to be looking at upgrading that to more of a React website, modernizing it a little bit, making it a little more user-friendly and inviting and just easier to look at than the WordPress site was. That's the end goal. I've got to learn a lot about React still. I'm familiar with it, but Node.js is new. Next.js is even newer for me. I'm not even at all familiar with Strapi, which is the CMS, which I believe is the front-end management system for it. So that's going to be part of it. Again, N8N is on there. I do have a twin gate remote access so that I can access this if I'm outside of my network, mainly if I want to check in on the AMP servers from remote, as well as looking into the AMP servers. I can't remember if I said the AMP servers or the Proxmox servers. I think it was the other one. Again, we got to get the SecOnion set back up, Wazoo set back up. Claude Code, I've got to get that set back up because that helps with some of the design. I don't really consider myself a, what do they call them? vibe coder, but I am not a programmer and coder by design. I know several languages. I know more basics than anything else, but I do know several different languages. And so I combine Claude with doing my own research, combining both. It just helps because it helps me to learn the designs that I don't know, like React and Node.js, all that. But it also makes it easier for me to build it so I don't have to know everything. So kind of a vibe coder, not really a vibe coder, but you be the judge. I'm sure I'll probably be doing a lot more vibe coding in the beginning to get things back up and running, and then obviously making adjustments later on, which we'll cover in other episodes. Again, the point of this channel is to learn and try new things and step outside of the comfort zone. So I thought I would bring in some of this background of what I do on the day-to-day in terms of technology, being a security manager, information security and identity access management manager, and kind of bring that more to the forefront of here's some things I can teach and share, and also, again, learn along the way with you guys, as well as doing things like working on new 3D prints to help with building a mini lab so I can use mini computers and mini PCs to expand the home lab and make it more modernized, so to speak, in terms of some of the services that it provides. Because again, some of the equipment that I'm currently running is much older. Again, I'm running the R710s, which are DDR3, so are the DL360s. So being able to use microsystems and mini systems in the environment can help modernize some of it and also help me expand on what I'm doing and ultimately the things I'm offering. A couple other things that we obviously want to get set up are a Proxmox backup server, and then the Proxmox, it's called DC Manager, but I really think of it more as the Proxmox front end. It kind of helps one place to see everything. Now, I don't know if I'm going to set that back up just yet, primarily because we're combining the cluster into one. So I don't know that I'll need to necessarily set that back up, but I have it included in the plan just in case we decide to roll that out as well. I do think some of the information that you can set up in there is a little bit better for monitoring performance and things like that than trying to hunt through in the actual Proxmox manager for the virtual data store. So again, we'll see if I set that back up, but I have it on there as a potential. It doesn't take much to run it, so it's a handy tool to add in if nothing else. First rollout is obviously I do have to get the DNS servers set back up, the two Pi-hole servers. I will then point all of the VMs to those servers for DNS. Obviously, I've got to get the SSL set back up, which means I have to get Traefik set back up, and then set up the different subdomains that it's going to be managing for me. Again, you'll see here too, I do have two Synology devices, so we're going to be using one that is going to be running a RAID 10 for storage of the VM. So the VMs will actually run off of the Synology device. It's actually closer to 72 terabytes of total size versus 50, but you'll see here that it currently says 50 in the rollout and like planning of this. That was the approximate that it had set. Obviously, again, as I was getting it implemented and set up, we were able to get a little bit more than what the calculations had determined. The second iSCSI manager or Synology device that I have is actually going to be the backup storage specifically, so that we have a technically online backup storage, but technically offline backup storage, so that I have a way to recover quickly if anything happens or something goes down, or, you know, bad config and I break something and need to recover. So we'll have that set up as well, running frequent backups. So I do have this kind of broken out. I was going through and doing some backups of all of the mail stuff that I had put in place already. So you can see some of that listed here. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything when I was doing the backups, so I had Claude Code help me put that together. Again, I do have the SynStore 01 and 02 set up and ready to go. They are both thin LUNs, not thick LUNs. So hopefully they run a little bit smoother. I was having some performance issues and latency issues with the thick LUNs set up, so we've got that figured out. I do have to go in and get my Cloudflare token. I do have a Twitch page for 7 Days Dedicated. So if you want to follow that, it's just at 7 Days Dedicated on Twitch and on YouTube. I believe it's at 7 Days Dedicated on Twitch. All one word, no spaces. Again, you could see it right here. This is the spelling of it if you want to join that. We do live streams of the game servers that we host and trying to make it fun and inviting and just interactive for everybody. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning the streaming. I'm also still learning the video processing and setup and all of that for YouTube. So this is probably not going to be the greatest video once it's all put together, but it should be at least a little bit fun to watch. So then we got to get the twin gate set up, make sure we have the details for that. We've got to have the amp set back up. I do have the license key for that. I did get the VLANs added to my switch configuration. I do have Proxmox ready to be installed on the systems, and that is essentially where we're at right now. So what we'll take a look at from here is we'll jump over to Firefox. And the reason I have to use Firefox is because modern browsers don't work well with Java. And specifically the Java web application for connecting to the iDRAC of the PowerEdge devices. Lot of message. Basically, it's a way for me to be able to remote in and remotely manage the device from everything from power up to setup, etc. So what we're going to do here is we'll actually go ahead and we are going to execute a server control command on Dell 01. And then we're going to come over here to properties. Oh, look at that. Power command failed. It's always got to be something, right? We'll give it just a second here and see if it loads. Let me refresh. Okay. Okay, power command failed. Just wait here. I'm going to launch this. I don't know if it's going to work initially because it's not actually on, but I think I can power on the system from here as well. And that actually worked. So now it will boot. And I do have the USB drive already in it so that we can install Proxmox. I downloaded the latest version of Proxmox, which I believe was 9.1-1 or 9.1.1. Anyways, it's the latest like tested or alpha. I don't remember how they phrase it on Proxmox, but the latest stable version that you can download on Proxmox's website. So we'll wait a minute or two here until this starts to load up. And it does take a while. Again, these are older systems. So while this is booting, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on the background. And oh, you guys cannot see what I am seeing. So let me add this in here. And all right, now you can see what I'm seeing. So this just takes a moment to load, and obviously we'll have to update because each one is going to be slightly different, but shouldn't be that big of a deal to capture the window and bring it in as we get into it. So the nice thing about this is, again, I don't have to be right at the server, which means I could copy and paste a lot of things while I'm doing the setup. And some of the tools in here allow passing all keystrokes to the server. So if I have something in the clipboard, I could essentially paste that in and have it input it for me. Makes it a little bit easier. Reason for that is I have bonded network adapters. So for the main data network, I have 4 1 gigs that I bond to essentially a 4 gig pipe. And then for the iSCSI network, for connecting to the Synology devices, I have a 10 gig pair. So it's 2 10 gig Ethernet connections for a total of 20 gigabits. Long story short, I can actually paste the commands in to set those up a lot easier doing it this way than trying to be at the system and type it in, because I have it in the notepad, obviously, so I'm going to just copy and paste the details in. Hopefully that should make it a little bit easier, make it go a little bit quicker, and again, just every little bit to simplify getting things back online and set back up. And now, while this is taking a minute, it is still booting in. If we go back to the notepad here and we kind of scroll down a little bit, you can see I've got like the SynStore setups. I've got the setups for everything. And if we keep going, we have the join cluster. That is obviously going to get us through the Dells. We have to do that for the HP devices as well, which are listed further down here, and what we need to do for that. But the big thing I wanted to kind of go over here is the high availability. So the other thing I like about Proxmox is the setup for the high availability is actually quite easy, and you could set fallback priorities as well as like member priorities, which ones are the priority member to which devices. And since we have 2 different types of systems and essentially 2 different types of cluster in one cluster, we want to make sure that we set this up correctly, because a node from the Dell servers isn't going to fail over to the HP servers quite as nicely, and vice versa, than staying within its servers. But if all the Dell servers happen to fail for some reason, this way we have like fallbacks for that and how to get that set back up so that things are a little bit more stable, if that makes sense. So a little bit of how we're going to be setting that up. And then it gets into the getting the core infrastructure set up. So setting up like the Pi-hole, getting Pi-hole admin set up, setting up the DNS records for everything. Now, a lot of this, you'll see it, but I'm obviously going to obfuscate and blur out some of the internal IP information just because, again, you know, I don't want to share too much with everybody on the internet, but at least you can kind of get an idea of what we have going on here and what the game plan is for getting things back up and configured correctly and essentially communicating properly on the network. And I would like to note too, this is the way I've got this set up is sort of a double NAT scenario. So I have my main network that everything comes into, and then I trunk that through a edge router device into the VLANs for the 7 days dedicated network. So they're essentially two separate networks. It helps a little bit, obviously, with traversal and being able to move laterally between systems and things like that. So it's not perfect. I'm not saying like everybody should do that and it's the greatest setup in the world. I'm just telling you how I have mine set up and how it works. It does make it a little bit more cumbersome to manage. I would like to get everything onto one network essentially and manage it that way. Have it go through a proper firewall at the front instead of doing more IDS, IPS at the back and kind of relying on the edge router to do some firewall as well as automations around that to help block known malicious IPs and things. And then obviously host firewalls set up on the hosts to help minimize the risk. But this is the way I have it available to me right now. And then obviously the front of my network, I do have on the modem a actual dedicated firewall setup. So this is still taking a little while. We'll go ahead and go back here to the screen share for Firefox, but you can see we're getting almost done with the initial post, at least the memory configuration and system calling. So it's right now it's just trying to call all the devices and get them loading. And then it'll start to actually bring them online next. But you can see we are right now waiting to enter the boot manager. And this does have UEFI. It, kind of pegged out the microphone there. So it is somewhat at least of a modern boot, but not perfect, obviously. The other thing that we have set up with this is just a extra heartbeat VLAN now that I did not have before called CoroSync. I'm not familiar with that. I assume that's a Proxmox thing that is built into Proxmox, but it essentially is just a heartbeat to ensure that the devices see each other and can ping each other. So you can see here now it's loaded the processors. It's also loaded the memory. The memory speed is a little bit slower than I would like, but costs are just getting too high to be able to afford faster memory, unfortunately. So I bought what I could that was somewhat affordable. Maybe if, you know, things start to pan out a little bit and I could start building some tools that I can monetize the setup a little bit, that will allow me to eventually upgrade the servers, as well as even just upgrade the memory for the time being, so it's a little bit fresher and a little bit newer. So we should be booting into the boot menu now. Hopefully it's not going to just load Proxmox by default, but we'll give it just another moment here. Sure is taking its sweet time. And what I'll probably do is get this one set up, and then I'll set up the others off camera just to make it go a little bit faster. A little bit faster, excuse me. That way also you all don't have to sit through how embarrassingly slow this process is. But in the meantime, we will wait and see what we could get going here. Now, normally you can see the boot menu by now. I'm not sure why this is not taking me to the boot menu. We'll give it just another moment here. And while we're waiting, yeah, so essentially, like I said, I think just to keep things moving and so that it's not just stale content, you watching me go through and set up all 6 devices. I'll get this one set up. You can kind of get the basics of what I'm doing, and then we'll go from there once the others are set up. And I'll probably just jump cut. Just a heads up, I'm going to try to keep this all one video, so it might be another day or two after this video that it comes together. So if all of a sudden I'm wearing different clothes, that's why. Just to give you a heads up, because it's currently 8:09 p.m. here in the Central Time, and I don't really feel like sitting up late, setting up servers when I got to get up early and work tomorrow. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. I'm going to get up for just a moment, take a look at the actual screen and see if I could see what's going on. Bear with me one moment. All right, so it is just hung on this screen right here with the cursor. I think. Oh, here we go. Just when I was about to try to restart it, it has decided to start loading. Go figure. I don't know if it was just waiting for me to plug in the monitor or what. But we'll give it a moment here again. Hopefully it doesn't boot directly into Proxmox. I thought I told it to boot to the boot menu. So I'm not really sure why this is taking so long. And this is... not showing me the... If I'm being honest, I'm not sure which one to select. We're going to try this. Nope, that is not... Well, let's see what happens. I don't know. If this takes us to the root screen, we'll have to restart again. But hopefully this brings us to the install. Nope, I think it's actually bringing us to the login screen. And now you'll see it did get bigger. Yeah, so this brought us into the previous setup. That is not where I wanted to be. So I'm going to send a warm boot cycle to it, and hopefully it does it correctly. And I am not sure why it did not see the USB device. So we'll give it just another minute here. I will say on a reboot, it does usually tend to boot a little bit faster. Still not very fast, but faster. So we'll see what happens there. Should be coming up any second now. What I'm doing right now is just relaunching the the web window, the Java web app window. All right, so it is rebooting. Now, like I said, it's not the fastest, but it is a little bit faster. This time I'm actually going to have to boot into the BIOS. So I'll probably have to do this on all of them, but we'll see how this one goes. Pardon me, I paused for a second there, so you might notice a little jump cut. Had to clear my throat, had a little raspiness to my voice there I wanted to get rid of, and I didn't want to clear my throat for everyone to hear. But I suppose I could have just cleared all that out in the editing. This is always the fun part, sitting and waiting. But, you know, we'll edit it out. I'm probably going to clean it up so that everything that took place before this, you don't even see. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll leave it in. Maybe I'll turn it into bloopers. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But as you can see, it is booting. Again, it's not the fastest. I do believe it's mostly because of the 800 megahertz for the RAM. Yeah, the post is a very slow post. And like I said, this time we'll actually go into the BIOS. We will make sure it's set up to see USB drive, because it wasn't seeing it in the boot manager previously, and I want to make sure that it is booting to that, because I do believe that's set up for EFI as well. And while we're waiting, so I was talking about 3D printing and mini labs. If you're not familiar with mini labs, mini home labs are essentially a rack setup similar to what you see above my shoulder here. So this is actually an AI generated image of what I actually have in my rack. It's not the greatest, but it gives a rough view of what it has. And then you can also see right here behind me, it's got my 3D printer, which is actually next to me over here. Anyways, all that to say, a mini rack and mini lab is essentially the same thing as this rack. It's essentially the same thing that you see right here, but smaller. So what I've been working on is actually printing a mini rack to get into that mini home lab setup. I'd love to start playing with Raspberry Pis. I mean, who wouldn't want to play with fun new toys? But I digress. But I also have a small HP Elite desk or Elite book. Elite desk? I can't remember what it's called. That is actually a mini PC though. And this way I could actually move it into the rack, and I use that to manage my HP ILOs. Mainly that way I could see if there's any critical security updates that do get pushed out. Obviously not something that happens often because they are end of life, as are the Dell R710s, but it is a way to at least still be able to see what's out there and get any limited support I could get on it. So I've got that set up. That uses a tool called HP Insight something system. Insight. Anyways, I call it HPIRS because that's the acronym for it. And that just sits in right now. It's just sitting on my window ledge, sucking in cold air from outside to stay nice and cool, but then connected to the network so that it can be essentially managed and manage my HP devices. The cool thing about that is it will fit into a mini rack like this. Now this is just the feet and the feet and the top handle, so that there'll actually be posts that come in between here. You can see it's got like little screw holes right there, so you could screw it together. There are some little adapters that you can print as well. I am printing this on PETG carbon fiber for two reasons. One, I had it because I was playing with it, and I was printing something else that I needed to get kind of a more rigid high heat application for, and because I like the color. I'm a fan of the black and green Linux colors, I guess you could call them, because that's typically what you see, is that kind of neon green on black. And so yeah, so I'm working on doing that. I am having some bed adhesion issues, and I am working on trying to I modified my 3D printer. I have a Creality Ender 3 V3 SE, and there is a really great video out there on how you can add screw points to your Creality Ender 3 V3 and actually make it somewhat modular so that you can add different different attachments, different mounts, etc. And part of it is you have to do some of it for the, I put some stabilizer arms on there. That's why I had the PETG carbon fiber filament. That was the recommendation for doing the stabilizer arms, because of the heat that gets generated by the bed and the nozzle and everything. And I do have mine in enclosure, so it gets warmer in there, and it will just help resist some of that heat. So the person that posted the files and the instructions for how to essentially make your Ender 3 V3 KE or SE more modular is a YouTuber by the name of Need It Make It, and I will link them in the description. If you have a 3D printer and you're another Creality Ender 3 V3 SE or KE owner like myself, highly recommend checking them out. It gives some good information. There's another YouTuber I had looked at about my particular printer, and that is Embrace Making. They had a recommendation for upgrading to the 10 millimeter rail rods for the bed gantry, essentially, and the setup for that. They're a little bit stiffer and actually hold their straightness a little bit better. So if you don't want to go the whole setup route of doing the, I don't remember what they're called, essentially the linear rails, it's another way to do that without having to do that full upgrade. Essentially, you're just upgrading the rods themselves, and they do screw direct in. It is a little bit of work to get it set up and put together and everything, but it's actually a really easy setup to follow as well. So another YouTuber there, I'll also link in the description if you want to check them out. But it does look like we are getting booted up here, so we'll give it just another moment, and we should be into the setup screen, and then we have to boot one more time, because obviously once we're done in here, we have to go in and do this all over again. Always so fun, right? Okay. Oop. Okay. Now we're going to go, I think, into boot settings. I'm going to take a look at the boot sequence. Okay, I don't know why I can't take a look at that. Let's take a look at integrated devices. So the internal USB port is on. All ports are on. Maybe it just didn't see it. Let's back out of this. Let's go into here. I don't know why it's not opening that up. Let's take a look at what is it under. Maybe under data settings. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. So what I'm trying to make sure is that the USB port is UEFI, and I am not seeing an option for that. So I think it should be. Oh, that is so not right. Not sure what happened there. Let's do a minus because it's only the 22nd. And we're going to do 20. And then we're going to exit. Hopefully that is set up right now. Yeah. All right. So I mean, I don't know what the EHCI and UHCI differentiators are. And I'm not 100% sure where each of those are. But I think I have it plugged into the correct port. So save changes and exit, I guess. And now we'll wait and do this all over again. Because who doesn't have infinite time, right? This is always so fun. Trying to troubleshoot on the fly. Doing a screen share, screen recording, and running into issues left and right and center. But on the plus side, at least I'll have some good B-roll that I'll be able to turn into little intro clips and stuff. Make it more fun coming in. You know, show me welding on the wheel for the Catalina and then working on the servers here. Doing a little bit of everything, right? Because the way I look at it is if you're not learning, you're falling behind. And I am not perfect by any means, but I definitely don't want to be falling behind. And while we're just gabbing, there is another playlist of mine that I have on 3D project ideas where I have a gentleman I follow named Ivan Miranda, who built a CNC from scratch that cuts metal. I kind of want to take that design and use, instead of all 3D printed parts, because he used primarily 3D printed parts and linear rails, take it into like an actual metal variation. Because I have a 3D plasma, or not a 3D, I have a plasma cutter. And I would love to have it be able to be a CNC plasma cutter to be able to fabricate my own parts and things as I need to. So that's another person I follow. I'll link them in the description below too. And while we're talking about it, a lot of the ideas that I've gotten for doing things like D8N automations, learning about Claude Code and everything that it's good at, and, you know, setting up my own home AI server. I actually picked a lot of that knowledge up from watching a gentleman by the name of Network Chuck. So if you're not following him, he's another one I highly recommend. Great online teacher for things like networking, you know, AI integration, automation. He does a lot of stuff for security too. Just a great YouTuber in general. In fact, Network Chuck, if you ever see this, hopefully one day I get to meet you in person and shake your hand, sir, because I've learned a lot from you. And I know you did a video recently not directly talking about it, but indirectly talking about imposter syndrome. And as a security professional, network systems professional myself, I suffer from imposter syndrome all the time as well. I don't think it's and that was a long pause. I was going to say, I don't think, but actually I think it's very common in IT to get imposter syndrome and feel like I'm not keeping up. I'm not learning enough fast enough. There's always someone else that knows more than me. The thing I've come to learn in my career is it's not that I don't know enough or that I'm not smart enough. It's that I just haven't learned what they've learned yet. And I need to learn it too. And that is the crux of what this channel is I want to learn with you guys. I want to learn with you gals. I want this to be a channel where we're figuring it out as we go along. You know, is it going to be perfect? No. Do I expect to be unhackable? No. I wouldn't even dare to ever dream it. I hope I don't get hacked. I hope that anybody that watches these videos sees that my end game here is just to provide a gaming community that people can enjoy and share things that can maybe help teach people the wrong way to do it so they don't do it. Because I'm going to make a lot of mistakes at all of it. And there are bad actors out there. You know, they might not call themselves bad actors. In their mind, they're just making money. They're just doing a job. But they exist. And it's not something that you can just essentially walk away from or ignore. You have to just be aware of it and do what you can to, you know, minimize the risk, but also learn to accept that some risk is inevitable. I guess at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. If you don't know Stuart Smalley, then you haven't lived. But I digress. Hopefully I don't get flagged for saying that. It was kind of more of a cheeky homage to Stuart Smalley, more than me trying to claim it as my own. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So, you know, Network Chuck, on the off chance that somehow you see this video, just know that you're doing a good thing. People need to learn AI. People need to learn networking if that's the career they want to go into. People need to learn the fundamentals of security. And I think you do a wonderful job of teaching it. So keep your head up, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Know that I'll continue watching. I'll continue learning from you, making my own mistakes and sharing the mistakes I make along the way with my channel, and just trying to bring knowledge to people that want it. And maybe you want to just see somebody ad-lib for 20 minutes or longer while they're waiting for their Dell R710 to boot. And hopefully actually boot into the USB drive this time. I've noticed I keep pegging the volume on here, so I'm going to drop this down just a hair. Pop, pop. There we go. I think we've got it dialed in just right now. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. And it'll make post-editing Sam a little bit happier, so he's not trying to edit the volume controls later on. My golly, this is taking a long time. I think I am going to keep this all in. No, I can't. Maybe. Yeah. I think what I'm going to do is keep it in. I'm going to zip through and speed up parts where there's a lot of waiting. I'm going to keep in the parts where I'm talking about other YouTubers that I think you should keep an eye on, and hopefully condense this down, because this, right at this moment that I am speaking, is now an hour-long recording. So that's not great. I am definitely not trying to make an hour-long video. So we'll see what I do. I feel like I should put in like a cheeky little... No. Post-edit, Sam. Make it happen. Make this all come together real nice. Who knows? We'll see. Do some little clip cuts. I don't know. We'll have some fun with it. We'll see what happens. All right, we're going through this process again. Yeehaw. I do like the processor speeds. I do wish there was a bit more cache. I think there's only like 12 megs cache, where the HPs have like 20 or 30 megs cache. You know, I would love to get my hands on some R740s or some newer HPs, but with the market the way it is, I don't know how feasible that's going to be. But yeah, another plan I have that maybe I will take you all along with me on is I would love to build an enclosure for my server rack, so it's not just sitting in the middle of my office. I have a background screen on here. As you can see right now, my office is in a bit of disarray because I've been moving stuff around. So rather than share my messy office, I made it look nice for everyone. But I would like to share my actual office and videos and not have to do a background. And I would love to get my servers into an enclosed like server closet. And my goal with that would be to have it enclosed in soundproof glass windows with a soundproof door or entrance, at least semi-soundproof, so it muffles some of it. Obviously, I'll have to put in some baffles and stuff in the ceiling, but the end goal would then be to move all of the networking in my house to come to my office in that server closet, and then redevelop and redesign my entire home network so I can add more VLAN structure for separating out other devices and things of that nature. So still waiting for it to get to the UEFI boot menu screen. I apologize. I don't know if you guys have been hearing like clicks and beeps. Normally I am wearing these, but I am trying to be more professional and not wear them in the video. So I don't know what you guys may or may not have been hearing. If there's been a lot of clicks, beeps, talking, things like that from the desktop, I apologize. I just realized I did not mute the desktop audio. So hopefully you haven't been hearing any of that, but if you have, it should stop now. And I will see what I can do about cleaning it up in editing, if it exists. Also, if you are not aware, I do have a separate YouTube channel for 7 days dedicated. On that channel is where I host videos. I said that weird. On that channel is where I post videos of games that are hosted in the 7 days dedicated community, primarily the games that currently I'm hosting. The end game with 7 days dedicated is that it becomes more community driven, and we're sharing, like, everybody in the community is sharing games that they're hosting. And then it's, you know, gives a non-toxic community for people to play in and have fun and sharing the experience with and together. But yeah, if you're not following that one, I highly recommend at 7 days dedicated. I think I mentioned that earlier, and I think it's also the same thing on Twitch at 7 days dedicated on Twitch. Because there is where you can actually see some of the gaming that we do. And again, like I said, some of the games that we actually host and why we're rebuilding everything. All right, we should be getting a little bit closer now to being able to try to get Proxmox loading. Excuse me. My apologies. That I am going to cut out. But anyways, hopefully we're getting a little bit closer to getting Proxmox loaded. And again, I do not see the interest. That is very interesting. So I actually don't see the USB. I wonder if I'm guessing this is actually, yeah, just the same. I think it's just the same boot from the drive. It sure is. All right, well, I think what I'm going to do is at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And I'm just going to have to come back to this and figure out why it's not seeing the USB drive. So once I get that figured out and get back to the actual boot screen and Proxmox loading screen, we will take another look at the setup process for the Dells. Sorry, I'm starting to actually get a little tired, so my brain is slowing down a little bit, but we will come back. Hopefully I could get it to the actual Proxmox like install screen and we could start the install process and we'll go from there. So the next time you see me, I will be wearing different clothes and my hairstyle might be a little different and I might look a little different, but we'll pick up once we figure out the boot problem. And I will update on what I find once I figure out the boot problem. Until then, we'll see you soon.